Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. We will wait a couple minutes for other people to pile in and we'll get started shortly. Okay, let's get started. First of all, can everyone hear me okay? If you could just let me know in the chat. Okay, great. So I'm Sabrina Bosick. I'm the Director of Marketing for Waypoint Group. Thanks for responding to my emails and for joining us today. We're going to do a quick run through of TopBox, so showing you how your team can use feedback to better understand different segments of your business, and in this case, strategic accounts, which will be our focus today. We have Steve Bernstein here. He's the CEO and founder of Waypoint Group, which is a Bay Area consulting firm specializing in helping B2B companies measure and improve their customer experience. He's also the mastermind behind TopBox, so really there's no better person to walk us through some of the unique account-based analysis that we'll see here today. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to put them in the chat window, and we'll be sure to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, Steve, take it away.
Today, we're really going to be focusing on this strategic segment, right? The small number of accounts that are responsible for a large portion of revenue. And to that end, we'll be focusing in this piece of the demo on really this one-to-one aspect. Kind of the ability for a customer success manager, an account executive, a account manager, whatever you call it in your company, the ability for those people to understand what's going on inside their individual accounts. And so therefore we won't be focusing much time in this demo on the one-to-many side, right? Kind of getting that aggregate view. I do want to make sure you understand that there are two parts to the, kind of two halves of the coin here, right? There's the one-to-one individual accounts and then the one-to-many. And for this presentation today, we'll be focusing on the former, right, the one-to-one side. So without further ado, let me pop into our demo and give you a view into what an account manager should be able to expect to see with regards to the health of their particular accounts. Now, you'll see that there's this navigation area. What I'm going to do actually is start with this customer heat map, which takes a view of accounts individually. So if I'm an account manager and I just want to look at all the data in the system for my accounts, I can leave my filters blank. But let's say I just want to look at any accounts that I'm responsible for in Tier 1, and I want to look at, let's say I want to look at last year's wave. It's designed to be kind of an easy point-and-click interface for viewing account-centric or any data for that matter in a very point-and-click, easy-to-use way. So what we've got here on this screen is a picture of all of our accounts, and we see, for example, there's this is our Tier 1 segment, our strategic accounts, and I get a map of essentially the current status of all the accounts that have given feedback or not given feedback. And if you've been reading any of the materials that Waypoint Group has provided over time, you probably know that we are a huge advocate of looking at response rate as a meaningful indicator of the strength of the relationship. That is, when we've done dozens of analyses, I should say, over the years, looking at the impact of silent accounts on the overall customer revenue. And what we find is accounts that are not responding, again, those silent accounts, tend to be the most likely to churn. In some cases, we've seen the difference being up to 14 times greater churn rates for accounts that are silent versus accounts that are giving you feedback. So response rate as a measure of the strength of the relationship and then another predictor of churn are two elements you really want to look at. So in this demo, we see the circle size being a representation of the response rate. On the x-axis here, we've got the total account value. Then this particular demo data set, we've got a measure of MRR, the monthly recurring revenue, but this could really be any indication of value that your company uses. And we would generally see that larger accounts generally should have more accounts being invited, and circle size being the response rate, while color is indicating the overall sentiment. So here we've got a dot that's very small, indicating that it's completely silent, right? The account is gray. It's our largest account in terms of monthly revenue, and they haven't given us any feedback. By contrast, we've got, here's a happy account that's kind of middle of the pack. Here's an unhappy account that's not spending very much. And basically, with this kind of view, we can very quickly get a sense of what some of the treatment strategies might be. And one of the first questions we probably want to ask is, where are my best upsell and cross-sell opportunities? Here's an example. This particular account loves us. They're very happy. We've got a decent response rate. We could definitely do better there. But relative to other tier 1 accounts, it looks like maybe there's some opportunity for cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So that first question I want to look at is, again, where are my best cross-sell opportunities? Where should I spend my time? And from a sales perspective, this happy account might be an easy way to start that conversation. On the other hand, here's an account that is yellow. So they are, it's a high response rate. You see here when I mouse over, a 62.5% response rate. It's middle of the pack in terms of value. Not a lot of contacts that were invited, but again, it's a different sales move. I probably want to look at what's going on in this particular account that I need to shore up to put them into that green band. But in terms of sales activity, I could definitely start with this particular account. But let's drill into this guy, customer 20. That's our very exciting names for our demo data. But we've got customer 20 here, and I'm going to click on that and drill in. And what I get when I see that is we call it the account X-ray, or the account health report, where each box is a person who's responded or not responded. It's a person that's been invited to provide feedback. And I've got a set of summary data at the top of the screen. But most importantly, I see a number of interesting things here. As the CSM for this particular account, I might want to think about better ways to engage my decision makers. I've got 2 decision makers that are yellow, 1 that's green, 2 that haven't responded, and I probably want to make sure that I'm getting feedback from these 2 folks that haven't responded. Maybe I can engage Frank to help me get a response from these 2 guys over here, or get some better insight into what's going on. If I click on this box, then I can see their full survey response and start to drill in a little bit more about what they might be looking at. But again, the important thing is to look at this whole map of the account and get a sense really quickly of who's with me and who's not with me, right? And where can I expand my footprint? So Frank is green. He's clearly a promoter, somebody who loves us. Down here in our day-to-day contacts, right, in this org chart view, we see Ben and Rachel, which are quite happy. And again, we really want to take the approach of activating our promoters, taking advantage of the fact that these people have an excitement and a strong relationship with us. Let's look at ways that they can introduce us into other parts of the account and expand my footprint. So, in terms of kind of the hierarchy of questions, the first question I'm looking at is from a sales perspective, hey, where are my best cross-sell and upsell opportunities? The second question might be, how do I expand my footprint into this particular account? And now I can clearly start to see, where do I have promoters that I can activate for better introductions, to leverage for references and referrals inside the account or even outside the account? Now, from here, right, I think I want to get a sense of what do these people think of the relationship overall. Now, I can click on their box, like I showed you, and see individual survey responses, but what I think might make more sense is to get a good picture of how they think of our relationship with them overall. So, again, looking at that particular account, when I click on this, I've got a set of sticky filters as I move through this, so I'm still looking at the same account, and what I see is, of all the people in the account, here's our net promoter breakdown. We've got 1 person that's pretty unhappy, and it looks like that person is seeking a relationship upgrade. We've asked a question on our questionnaire, asking them, how do they currently perceive us? Do they perceive us as a product vendor, as you see down here, or a solutions provider, or do they see us as a strategic partner? And we see across the board, for all of our participants that responded to our request for feedback, they all are looking for a strategic partnership, and they see us currently as a product vendor or a solutions provider. This is great news, right? So the next question that I'm asking here as an account manager is, where are my best relationship opportunities? And right off the top, I can see within this account, here's 4 people that are essentially looking for more out of the relationship. And it's a great opportunity to ask them, well, what would that look like? What would a relationship upgrade? You'd want us to be more of a strategic partner or a business partner. What would that look like to you? What do you see us doing? What do you see yourself doing? Because partnership obviously implies both sides are working towards improving the relationship. We often find that these sorts of opportunities, especially where somebody's a detractor and wanting to improve the relationship, those are great opportunities for cross-sell and upsell, because where somebody is looking for more out of the relationship, it often implies that they should be buying more of your products and services to achieve the kinds of results that they're looking for. Now, another question that you might be asking, and I'm going to kind of move through at a little bit more brisk pace so that we have time for questions as we're going along. From an overarching kind of governance point of view, I've been showing you some interesting tools for the account manager, but overall, if I want to see across a particular set of accounts or within a particular segment, and again, let's go here and focus on our Tier 1 accounts, and I'm just going to run this report across everybody, and what I see is, well, there were 9 particular accounts, kind of here's our Net Promoter Score breakdown, but I can again very quickly see at a glance by account how many people were invited, who's responded, how many responses, right, detractor, passive, promoter, and again, that focus on response rate as a leading indicator of the health of the account. So we had 2 accounts here that didn't respond at all. Customer 1, right, had a 0% response rate, but we only invited 1 person from that account. Very thin relationship. On the other hand, customer 12, right, we invited 21 people, pretty sizable number of people that were invited, also 0 response rate. So therefore, there's no Net Promoter Score for these accounts. But again, it gives us a quick sense of what is where we have strong relationships and where we don't. Now, if we want to work to engage more of those account managers in that strategic account view, we might find that some financial linkage analysis would be very important. And this sort of a view shows us very clearly, on average, how much are accounts spending with us of different types of overall sentiment. You see here that low-scoring accounts in this particular data set are spending on average $8,900 a month, versus high-scoring accounts, right, are spending significantly more. Mid-scoring accounts are a little bit lower, and then here's a concern, right, our silent accounts and how much they're spending. And so we can add up basically like the red bar and the gray bar and the total account value and get a sense of total amount of revenue at risk. But this type of reporting we find is a good way to start a financial discussion with account teams that may not see the value for participating in your customer feedback program. And when I say participating, I think it's more than just inviting the right people, more than just encouraging response. We really want them to start to take action. And the question that they'll always come up with is, well, where do I take action? What sort of things should I be looking at? Here's an example of the kind of reporting, again, that's really going to help an account manager zero in. In this example, we see a particular account that scored against like accounts. So our questionnaire has a number of different areas that we're looking at, and we see, for example, training is scoring relatively low, tech support scoring relatively low. Again, for this account, the black line is the scores from this account. The blue bars are the scores from similar types of accounts, from accounts like it. And what we see is, well, training is scoring pretty low for customer 20, but scoring much higher than like accounts. So maybe it's an area that I don't really want to focus on right now, right? By contrast, customer 20 doesn't think too highly of our technology. There's a big gap here. Like accounts score technology much higher than customer 20. So I think I will need to get a good understanding of what's going on with customer 20, how they're thinking about us, and why they might be scoring our technology lower. So again, looking at the comments, looking at the rest of the scores could be a clear indicator of where and why that's happening. Another indicator that would be important for an account manager to look at is this individual trend. Over time, are the people that I'm working with trending in the right direction? Are they improving, right, or flat, or declining? Let's take a look at how that looks. Again, I'm looking at my Tier 1 accounts, comparing 2014 against 2015, and we see of the people that were included in both waves, in both time periods, then we can see how many are flat, right, the yellow bar, how many have improved, the green bar, how many have declined, and how many have checked out, right, not responded. Again, I want to have all of my data points in a row as an account manager to understand who's with me and who's not. And in this example, I see a lot of contacts that are trending in the wrong direction, right? There's a lot of contacts that have declined over time. And down here, I can see who those people are, how much they've declined, what they've moved, how this change in sentiment has occurred. Now, I've only scratched the surface here on the total capabilities that are included with the product. I know we only scheduled a half an hour, so I want to make sure that we've got some time for questions, and I see that there were a few that came in. Sabrina, maybe you can help me with this because there was some traffic on the chat window as I was talking. If you've got any other questions or comments, again, I know I'm moving at a quick clip here, but please submit the chat session. Okay, so I see on the chat window one question with regards to pricing. The question on pricing says here, if we're going to get all of our account managers involved, how do you price this such that it can make sense? The answer to that question actually is quite simple. We don't price per seat. Our view is that feedback should be able to be viewed and acted upon really across the enterprise. So for that reason, we actually work on more of a value pricing model, not a per seat pricing model, and we would want to make sure that everybody in the company can really have access to the types of insight that they should have access to. Sabrina, I don't know if you're still muted or able to participate.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't unmute fast enough earlier, but I do have a question here. How can I do key driver analysis for strategic accounts?
That is a good question. I would say, there's a whole section of key driver reports where we can provide a lot more insight around that. And of special interest, actually, is the ability to do side-by-side comparisons. I'm not really going to get into this in any detail because our focus today is on strategic accounts. But that said, you probably would want to look at your key driver analysis for particular segments compared against each other, right? So if I'm looking at my Tier 1 accounts across all roles, maybe I want to differentiate decision makers from everybody else and view that side by side, because the experience that decision makers have is really quite different than an experience that end users would have. And you can see that in clear contrast here. So we're not advocates necessarily of providing key driver analysis for your account teams, because it's probably data that you would want to use to drive participation across other parts of the company. It is a part of the product, but it's not something we're covering in depth today. We'll hit that topic on key driver analysis in more detail in the future.
Okay, great. And so in that last answer, you kind of mentioned decision makers and maybe other kinds of roles within an account. How can teams distinguish between a decision maker or an influencer or even a day-to-day user and understand their sentiment within an account?
That's a very good question. We are huge believers in role-based questionnaires. So, again, as I said before, the experience that a decision maker has, or relationship that a decision maker has with your company, should be very different than the relationship that a day-to-day person has, somebody who's really using the product on a regular basis. And it's important to distinguish that, not just in the analysis, but also to distinguish that even in the questionnaire. So we're big believers of having a role-based questionnaire. A lot of times we'll have a question at the very top of the process. Once that person clicks the invitation link, the first question is often something like, our records reflect that you hold the budget with regards to purchasing products and services from Acme Corporation. Please confirm by selecting the sentence that best describes your role so that we can make this questionnaire most efficient for you, right? Something like that. Basically, we're trying to say, hey, confirm your role, and if you do so, then we're going to make sure we have logic in the questionnaire so you only get the right questions that are pertinent to you, and it's a short and sweet experience. I think we've got maybe time for one more question before I wrap it up.
Okay, yeah. So the last question is, we've been running NPS for a while, and I don't want to over-survey my customers. Does my team need to run a new survey in order to get these insights?
That's a very good question. The answer is no. TopBox has two parts. There is we call it TopBox deployment, which has a questionnaire, a survey engine, if you will. You notice that I tried not to use the word survey, but maybe in a future discussion I can explain why that's the case. But in TopBox deployment, there's an engine here that will collect feedback, and the robust provides the role-based functionality, lots of look and feel. There's also TopBox Insights. TopBox Insights can pull data from TopBox deployment, of course, but it also can import data from any survey tool. As long as your survey tool can export in a standard Excel or CSV format, we can import it and run the analysis through TopBox to do this kind of slicing and dicing that might be interesting for you. I'm out of time, so I want to make sure that we kind of wrap it up on time. We are recording this, and there will be slides that we can send out, but this is basically a set of the questions that I started to address, right? You see, we hit the first four, the first 5 questions. We also touched a little bit on some of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but there's a lot of capability here that is going to require a deeper dive. And what I really want to summarize is, in terms of a takeaway all about TopBox, the first thing is we've been doing this kind of work for decades, actually. I've been doing this kind of work for about 20 years and found that, there's a consistent set of reporting that is required to do this right. And we built that in a turnkey method, right? Rather than giving you all the building blocks for you to figure it out on your own, we've made it simple. We've taken an account-centric approach rather than a contact-centric approach, right? The account-centric approach is all about understanding the health of the account and all the people within the account. We are providing a platform that is really all about engagement, not just collecting feedback. We haven't shown you the closed-loop capabilities, but there's a lot of elements in there that are really designed for B2B organization. And the other thing is there's only one area of the product, proudly, right, that uses averages. Where averages can be extremely misleading, right? Never cross a river that is on average 3 feet deep, because you'll drown like the guy here. Instead, focus on the right kinds of insights, and you can probably intuit the reason why we've named the product TopBox, because we are focused on creating more and more promoters, more and more of those TopBox customers. Now, I want to conclude with an offer. If you want to see your own data in TopBox, we can arrange for that to happen. More than likely without extra charge. So if you've got an existing program and you've got the data organized, we can help you get it organized, again, without any fees, and get your data imported into TopBox so that you can see if there's any benefit to looking at this tool in a more strategic way. So my contact information is on the screen here. You can drop me a note. We'd love to work with you to get your data in TopBox to see what it looks like. And then from there, if we think it makes sense, if you think it makes sense, we can think about a subscription after the fact. But we really want to kind of try before you buy. We're big believers in the fact that we are confident you'll see value here. So I think that wraps us up. Sabrina, maybe you want to let everybody know expectations on next steps?
Yeah, so as Steve mentioned earlier, we do have the ability for companies to upload their own NPS or feedback data into TopBox. So if you're interested in that, please email Steve at steveb@waypointgroup.org, which is on the screen as well. We will be sending out the recording to everyone, and so I apologize if anyone had audio issues. Hopefully, we can fix that moving forward. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Steve, for walking us through all that. I know it's a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but strategic accounts are so important, as I'm sure we can all agree. And so we hope you really got some good insight into how to manage them, specifically using customer feedback. So thanks everyone for joining again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be in touch.